My name is Georgette Gagnon. I'm Deputy Director of the Africa Division at Human Rights Watch. Our researchers have been documenting the human rights abuses in Sudan and Darfur for many years. We've interviewed thousands of victims of abuses. We've interviewed government officials, rebel leaders, and others. At this moment, the human rights situation in Darfur remains appalling. Civilian protection does not exist. That means people remain confined in displaced persons camps, unable to return home. If they return, they face death and other abuses at the hands of the Sudanese government and its militias, the Janjaweed. Recently, the Sudanese government agreed to the deployment of an African Union United Nations hybrid force. This force is supposed to protect civilians, permitting them to return to their homes, permitting the situation to become more secure for them so that women do not face rape, so that women are able to go out and get water and get food, so that children can safely play. The concern we have is that the Sudanese government will not actually go through with this commitment, that it will delay and deny, and the force will never get deployed, because this has been the Sudanese government's record. Whenever sustained, concerted pressure is put on them, they do act. When it is not put on them, they do not, and civilians continue to die and suffer. And now that number is at 2.5 million of displaced persons. So in our view, the international community, in particular the members of the United Nations Security Council, the members of the African Union Peace and Security Council, must increase the pressure they are putting on the Sudanese government to fully deploy the force. This is some 20,000 peacekeepers who would be placed throughout Darfur to protect civilians. We are urging the Security Council to establish what we called a Darfur Recovery Fund with Sudanese oil revenues. This, in our view, would be the key way to put pressure on the Sudanese government to go through with the actual deployment of this force. The Recovery Fund would be established by the Security Council under Chapter 7, and it would get at those oil revenues coming in to the Sudanese government. It would not get at oil revenues going to the Sudanese government's partners in the oil development it has, such as China and India. These revenues right now are contributing to the Sudanese government's ability to finance its military campaign in Darfur and elsewhere, and most importantly, to finance its continuing abuses, displacement, and other atrocities that still go on in Darfur. So we feel that the Darfur Recovery Fund would be a very effective way to pressure the Sudanese government to not only facilitate the deployment of the force, but end its abuses in Darfur. And so we are calling on the Security Council members, the US, China, Russia, others, the United States. We are calling on members of the African Union to support this idea in an effort to once and for all end the abusive policies of the Sudanese government in Darfur. There are also other measures that could be undertaken to put more pressure on the Sudanese government. Many groups have called for the Security Council to impose targeted sanctions on key individuals responsible for abusive policies in Darfur. These are top Sudanese leaders. Their names are well known. Everybody knows who they are. The UN panel of experts has lists of names, as does the UN Commission of Inquiry, and Human Rights Watch also has a list of 22 persons whom it has evidence were responsible for serious human rights violations in Darfur. These sanctions might cause some of these individuals to pause and stop doing and pursuing their abusive policies. The third thing that we and others think is most important to end the abuses and improve the situation in Darfur is pursuit of the International Criminal Court investigation. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants against 2 Sudanese leaders. One is a mid-level government leader, the other is a Janjaweed leader. This is a positive step which we hope will put a dent in the impunity that is rampant in Darfur. The Sudanese government has not prosecuted, let alone investigated, even one high-ranking person for crimes against humanity and war crimes in Darfur. We very much call on the Sudanese government to cooperate with the International Criminal Court and allow these 2 individuals to be extradited to the court, taken to the court, and we call on other countries who support the ICC to also assist in those arrest warrants and in supporting the court to move up the chain of command and continue to investigate and hopefully prosecute those at the very highest levels who bear the greatest responsibility for the atrocious crimes that have been going on in Darfur. It is clear there are specific actions members of the Security Council, other members of the international community can take to end the violence and protect civilians in Darfur. All that's lacking is the will.